do you really want the things that you say that you want? And what are you willing to do to get it? Like,
Hello, friends. We're back. We're Black and Curious. I'm Kendrin.
what up, what up? It is Deja. How y'all doing?
Oh, if you've never been here before, welcome. We do a cross section of pop culture in real life. We're back. Asia has our topic.
So, sometime last year, we had a conversation around how it was like a mass exodus of Black women going to live in all these different places right through the pandemic and thereafter. And recently I was listening to Getting Grown Pod, and they were having a guest on, well, two guests on, who were speaking about how they became expats, but they don't call themselves expats because clearly it's expatriates. So, but to give reference to our previous conversation, that's what we called it. But they were saying that they had like this life switch realization right around the between the 38 to like 41, 43 window, where they were just kind of like, okay, well, what is it that I really want for my life? And then how much can I live off of to create said life? And then what places in the world can I live the best on the least amount of money? And then what really matters to me? And I got to thinking about this on Tuesday, I believe it was, to be specific. It was their most recent episode that went up. I'll link it in the comments. But it got me to thinking for myself personally, because I have been in a constant state of like transition over the last 2 years, to be honest. There are things that I want for my life that I am now in a position to, in the next 6 months, be able to do. So I am like, okay, well, what is it that I'm afraid of? What's stopping me? Um, the questions that they ask, like, what can you live off of? How much can you live? And the crazy part about this whole thing, um, 3 years ago, maybe four at this point, one of my mentors, who is a ontological life coach, said these things to me. She was just like, I mean, how much money do you have in your 401k? And at the time, I think I had like a little under 50,000 in that short amount of time of me working for that company. And so she was like, okay, so just take the money and figure your life out. Like, you're young enough where you can rebuild that. So like, what difference does it matter, whether you hold on to this like squirrel nesting now? It, like, if you need it now, use it now. You're unhappy now. Fix the now so that the future will be brighter. And so her point was like, you live for the future when you should be living in the now, because the now is where you're suffering.
Interesting.
I was like, shit. And to 4 years, 3, 4 years later, to be brought to this same conversation and to be in the constant state of transition that I have been in over the last 2 years, I'm really considering it, because I am now coming back to myself in a place of peace, even though my I'm still uncomfortable. I'm in a place of peace where I can think about traveling out of the state for, a couple of days here or there. Or I can save money to the side in a way in which I could not do over the last decade, to be real. Like, yes, I was making decent money, but I wasn't able to save the way that I am doing so now, because I am generationally living. I don't know if I've made mention of that before, but that's what's happening with Asia. So I thought I would have this conversation with you primarily because you have traveled the world more than I have and have been able to see different things. And I was curious, like, what if you were to reevaluate your life, what things would you need? How could you live? Like, like that kind of stuff, based off of having seen a little bit more of the world than I have.
Okay, I haven't lived outside of the country, and the reason I haven't done that is because of my family. And not in a bad way. Like I like my family. I like my family very much. I like to see them. I like to see my friends. I like to see my community, and I don't really have a desire to not be proximate to them.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to be more proximate to them. So that's my thing. I regret nothing. I don't regret how I've done things. I think for me, in terms of like using my 401k, I would not do that. But I also don't, I'm not a person that believes like, okay, so I had a friend who was on like the Dave Ramsey cash only method,
Hmm.
beans and rice, like, and it just didn't seem like a happy life to me. So I don't believe in sparing myself many indulgences, but I also prioritize saving. And we've talked about this before, like how I believe very heavily in like automatic savings and like maximizing your savings and all of the things. So, I don't know. I don't regret much about how I've lived my life. I did a lot while I was pretty young. I think I felt like I've come to the realization in the last few years that like I think I had two runs at like a good youth run. Two or three, honestly, if you count from college, like everybody had their college experience, right? But then I had like a post-college, like really running the streets hard. And then I moved to a place where it was acceptable, being in Miami, to run the streets like older. So I did it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of times I feel like, especially if you stay in the same place, it's like, okay, you kind of get old, it gets old, or you settle down or whatever. But no, I just moved somewhere where it was acceptable to go hard a little longer. And I
Hmm.
did. And it was
Hmm.
a good time, and I had a good time, and I regret nothing. So,
I don't think it's a thing. I'm not necessarily asking or saying that I regret anything because I've had
no, I
like a
understand
lot
what
of
you're saying.
crazy experiences that have like changed the trajectory of where I thought I was going. And so now I'm just kind of like, okay, well, the thing that I have wanted the most as from the latter part of my 30s into now my 40s is to be able to travel the world and see the world and do so with a freedom where I don't have to worry about, when I come back, I need to make sure that all of my things are covered. Like I'm becoming unattached to the worldly things in a way that I never thought that I would. And I'm just like, damn, like I might be probably could really do this shit that I've been saying I wanted. It's a
Yeah.
questioning of like, do you
It's a
really want
values
the thing that you
proposition.
say? Yes. Yeah.
It's like what matters to you in the long run.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we should all evaluate. I do think that it's funny that people are like talking about having this little moment in life, and I'm like, they
Mm-hmm.
used to call it a midlife crisis. That's what we're all
Ah.
having. Fine. Um, it's like a rebranded midlife crisis, but it is, and like it's happening to me too, of like really evaluating the things that are super important to me, that are really evaluating like how I intend to live the remaining, parts of my life.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to do it. I think you should do it at a few different times. I
Yeah.
don't,
And we
yeah,
said
you
that
should
before. Like you're always
continually.
gonna reevaluate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I am, yeah, do it.
So yeah, like it's a thing of like, do you really, and this is what I'm saying to myself, do you really want the things that you say that you want? And what are you willing to do to get it? Like, not so much that I'm having a midlife crisis, but more like I am finally realizing and I'm in a place where I can live out the life, I can carve out, to be honest, carve out the life that I have always dreamed about having, but now having to reevaluate and say, okay, but at what cost? Like the cost at this point is like my comforts. There are things that I
Mhm.
desire, my creature comforts, right? There are
Mhm.
things that I desire to have, like being in my own space and being able to have my fancy glassware and my dishware and like being able to, create my home and decorate my space the way that I want it to because I'm living multi-generationally. I'm not able to do any of that. And so I am wrestling with myself, so to speak, and not a wrestling that's like negative where I'm worried so much, but I'm wrestling with myself in the sense of like, does any of that shit really matter if you're going to be out experiencing the world in a way that you have never been able to in in person, like in real time, in reality? Um,
I want it all.
yeah. I do, but then I
Like,
look at so I do, but then I look at, okay, if I have it all in that way, that requires me to still have to be physically attached to some place that I work, which is why I said in another conversation that I'm interested in the idea of influencing because that would allow me to carve out this life the way that I want it and work on my own terms.
okay.
Like, so I'm trying to I'm navigating this. This is all new. I've been navigating this
Mm.
kind of swimming around in my mind bits and pieces for the last couple of months. Something flying around this room. Um and looking at like to the point of the conversation that I had with a former mentor, like, what do you really need? How little can you live on? Like, and why do you feel like you need all of these things to the magnitude in which you like? Do the things really matter in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scope of the life that you want? Like, you could always have the things at some other point.
Yeah.
So I'm trying
I
to maybe release attachment to stuff that I am taking so seriously that I don't necessarily, it don't need to be that
I
because I'm
think that
in another way. If that makes any.
yeah, it does. It makes sense. And I think honestly, I think that is getting back to what I was saying earlier. I think that's a values decision. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a decision about what you want and how you want to live your life.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps if you had caught me maybe a few years ago, I might feel differently, but I think I'm in a space in my life right now where I am very heavily focused on, my relationships. My job is fine. Like I like my job finally. And I've basically been able to gain perspective about the fact that like a lot of the things that I was tripped up on and like that I was working on or working toward, I actually do have. It may not look exactly how I thought it was going to look, but I actually do have a lot of the things that I thought I would have to make my life, happier. So now I just want to like firm up my relationships, my friendships, like all the ships. That's what my my sort of mentor when I talked to her last, it was kind of like, oh, you're in a ship phase. That you're in a ship phase. You may come back around to where entrepreneurship is super important with you, but right now you're in like a friendships, your family, like your relationships, and that is okay. And I think these things come and go in phases.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe I'm just not in a phase right now where I think that's super important to me. It's not. And I think it's just where you are in your life and like what you feel is like your next steps or like whatever you have going on that's going to make one thing more important than the other.
Yeah.
But it's all values. It's all a value-based thing. And like
Yeah.
I'm at a point now where like I don't need a lot of stuff, but I like having shoe options and I'm not going to feel sorry about that. Like, and I'm not going to sell all my shoes and I want to have a cute, space where I can display my shoes and like really enjoy my things. Like, and that's important to me. And like,
Yeah.
I'm not a low to the ground girly. Like I've lived different ways throughout my life. I've lived in different circumstances or different environments and it was fine.
Hmm.
But that's not where I am anymore. I've earned to be able to enjoy my space and enjoy my shoes and my bags and my dishes or whatever, whatever else. Like I've earned that and I'm going to enjoy it. And
I,
but I've also
yeah.
traveled. So like there were times where I was sacrificing and like putting the money into the traveling more so than, having like a nice home. And
Mhm.
that was a choice too. And I don't
Mhm.
regret that either. But that's where I was then and this is where I am now.
Right. So that's the thing. I think that we did the opposites. Years ago we had a conversation about that, and he was like, "Child, I care more about my travel fund than I do about like living in some fancy whatever. Like as long as
Yeah.
the place is comfortable and beautiful enough for me, I'm good." And I was just like, "Nope, my money, my value for my living is higher than traveling and this, that, and the third." It's just so interesting how we are always like either parallel or we're opposite. So it's
Hmm?
funny, but now I'm in a place where because this is not the ideal situation in terms of like being able to live the way that I want to live, like because I'm again multi-generational living. I'm in a shared space, so I have to figure out how to carve out what I need for myself in this shared space, but
Yeah.
also recognize that I'm able to offset it and have something else altogether. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
For
And
sure.
like being able to have something else altogether is new for me.
Yeah. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool. Okay, yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, so I think that's cool to be in a different place. Like I think we're always moving in evolving and changing, and like you said, it could be just that we're kind of like swapping places where it's like some of the things that I prioritized before, you know, you're starting to prioritize now, and it's just a different way of living. And I think again, it's all in phases. So like there may come a point where, I prioritize something different too. But yeah, I don't regret how I lived. I enjoyed it and I had a great time, and I'm going to continue to travel. Travel is super important to me. I think is nothing like traveling to show you like how other people see the world.
Hmm.
Um and just enjoying other environments, other people's cultures. And I think that's really cool. But do I have some grand desire to like live minimally and like leave the country and all of that stuff? I don't. I don't.
I don't I don't know that it's a thing of desiring for me to live minimally, as much as it is a desire for me to have a freedom that I've not really ever experienced.
That's fair.
And that's really the thing that I'm seeking is the freedom
Yeah.
piece. Um, because shit is getting real crazy here in the US. And outside of that, for the people that I like, the influencers that I followed that have had made this like transition, they seem so much happier. Like the transition was definitely for the betterment of who they are as people. And
Yeah.
I wonder, like, what that would be like for me, even if I only did it for a couple of weeks at a time, just hopping from place to place and just trying to,
Yeah.
figure the life out. Like, what what version of Deja could I be living that way? That's really the question that I'm asking myself. And I wanted to share that
Yeah.
with
I
y'all
think that
because
would
I'm
be
like, what y'all thinking? How y'all living? What's going on with you?
so we have a conversation that I'll link down below with Sharita, who is a digital nomad, and she kind of lives her life this way. And I think it's really cool. I think
Yeah.
it's really cool to live your life as a digital nomad. So yeah, we'll link that down below as well, and we'll
So I
keep the
got a couple of
conversation going.
conversations.
So yeah,
Now
we
that I think
have. So we'll keep the conversation going. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you next time.
bye.
Bye.